Welcome back to Mean Streets, the podcast where we investigate the best, worst, and forgotten movies of film noir and more. I'm Luke Deckard.
And I'm Matthew Booth.
And we are your cinematic sleuths, and it's time to crack another case. Here we are. Not just any case, Matt, but...
Not just any case, no.
We have a big film, but also a big number. This is our 50th, 5-0 investigation. Can you believe it?
I can't actually. The time has flown, hasn't it? Time has flown by.
Feels like we should be like episode 10, not episode 50.
Yeah. It seems only right to pick a classic, which we'll get into, to celebrate the 50th. So
indeed. So it's investigation 50. We've hit 1 year as well. So it's all sort of because we have a couple of episodes that weren't proper, bonus episodes that sort of, got us through a couple of weeks. So we are 50 investigations in, a year in to Mean Streets. And, I guess we should probably say thank you to every single subscriber and follower across Apple and Spotify and YouTube.
Yeah, we should.
And, and all those who are starting to join our Patreon, which is fantastic to have you with us and supporting us.
And a big thank you to all of them. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We wouldn't be doing this without you. Literally.
We wouldn't. No, we wouldn't. So 50th show and full year. It's party time on Mean Streets.
Fucking A. Well, what case have we got this week to celebrate the big 50? For those not watching the screen who can see the film poster right next to me. But what do we
got?
For the people listening on Spotify and stuff like that. What do we got?
For those on audio only, we are taking the opportunity to celebrate our 50th case by delving into 1950s Sunset Boulevard, starring William Holden, Gloria Swanson, and Erich Von Stroheim. Written by Charles Brackett, Billy Wilder, and D.M. Marshman Jr., and directed, of course, famously by Billy Wilder. For anyone who doesn't know the story, the long line is: a screenwriter develops a dangerous relationship with a faded film star, determined to make a triumphant return.
There we are.
And that is Sunset Boulevard in a nutshell.
It is. I have so many thoughts, so many things to say. There's so much interesting stuff behind the scenes, but story-wise as well.
Yeah.
This is as a special 50. I think this is a good
this
one.
Is a good pick
to be the 50th. My goodness.
Yeah, it's a good pick for a special celebratory episode, I think, because it is a classic, and it was a joy really to rewatch it again. I thought I'd not seen it for a long time. Not watched it for a long time, and there were some things I'd forgotten about it. There were some things that I remember vividly, which we'll come on to. And it was nice to revisit for the purpose of this. So
it's an exhilarating film, and it's one of the. I mean, we've talked about this recently on the show, sort of the way noir kind of stretches into other genres, whether that's horror or can be science fiction and stuff. And there's a lot of classic noir elements in this, but there's a lot of shades of horror going on throughout.
That's one of the things that I'd picked up on or over the years had sort of forgotten about. Just how gothic this film is. It's we'll get into it in more detail, but when William Holden first sees
Oh no, let's not talk about that yet. No.
All right, okay.
No.
All right,
We're jumping the gun. We're jumping the gun. But
don't let me jump the gun. Don't let me jump the gun.
Yes.
But there are loads. This film is dripping in gothic sensibilities, and it is very much, I think, a horror film as much as a noir. I think it's a fabulous film. I think this.
Yeah. This is not to give the ending away, but it's a film that's hard to fault and very easy to enjoy. It's an easy way to spend 2 hours and not regret it.
Had you seen it before?
No, this was my first time seeing it.
Oh, right. There you go.
So there we are. This is numero uno for me. It's again, it's one of those films like I've known about it and I know it through pop culture, but it's the
Well,
pantheon of film noir. This is the other thing that's fun for me doing this podcast is it's making it A, I get to revisit all my favorites, and B, it's making me fill in the gaps
yeah,
of certain films that I've not seen that are huge or small that I'm like, I probably should see these, but I haven't yet. And
yeah.
this gives me a
That's
perfect excuse
interesting
to
because
go behind.
I'm generally the other way around doing this podcast.
Yeah.
All the classics I've seen and all the new ones that the newer ones that we've done, like sort of Brick and you the Nice Guys, famously the Nice Guys, I'd never
Yeah.
seen, and
Yeah.
mine may not have really bothered to watch. So
Mm,
podcast is working for both of us. But it's funny you should
indeed.
say, a friend of mine did say to me that I asked if he'd seen this film, and he said, I think I must have done because I know so much about it, but I can't remember ever actually sitting down to watch it. And I thought, well, you've never
Yes.
seen it then because you would remember it.
I feel like
But
you remember it. Yes.
yeah, but it's that influence that this film has had on films since it was made.
Yeah.
Because, like
Yeah.
you say, it's in pop culture all over the place, and certain
And
shots of it and certain lines from it are in popular culture.
yes, yes. I'm ready for my close up. Like it's I guess for me it's one of those things where I I wasn't steeped in film noir as a kid. There was film noir that was passing in front of me, and there were,
Mm,
hard boiled references that would come and go. But as a kid, I was mainly interested in superheroes and things like that. That was my childhood. It really wasn't until my 20s that I started to really dive into film noir and dive into hard-boiled literature, which then set me on the path, that I'm now on. And yeah, so it's in many ways, I'm not coming at this with decades and decades of exposure or
mm,
investment.
mhm.
Yeah, hence why there are blank spaces in my watch list here. Um, but then I get to find these cool old treasures. I get to see something like this for the first time, and it's not spoiled. Nothing about this film was spoiled for me,
No,
and I get to enjoy it from start to finish, and that's I'm glad I get to
yeah,
experience these 80-year-old 90-year
yeah,
old movies,
yeah.
for the
I
first
mean, that's
time.
hard to believe. Some of the ways this is presented, this way this is put together. It's hard to believe it's that old in many ways. But
Yes.
I don't remember when I saw this for the first time, but it will have been in my teens, I
Mm,
suspect. So it will have been sort of late 80s. And it'll have been on TV probably.
yeah. Yeah.
And I will have watched it expecting a conventional, because I will have seen the word. I'm only guessing, but I suspect I saw the words film noir and saw,
Mm,
the word murder, and will have thought, and saw sort of set in Hollywood, and I will have thought sounds a bit like Raymond Chandler to me. So I will have watched it for that and
yeah.
got this, you know,
Yeah.
which not quite what you're expecting, young Booth,
No,
So
not at all.
one of those
So
nice surprises.
yeah, I guess we can go behind the camera and talk about the people who made this film and how it got made, because there is a lot of juicy information just behind the scenes alone versus
Yeah.
the story. So the film cost 1.75 million to make. Box office return was 5 million, so I think it made its money back.
I would say
Um,
so.
Obviously, as you mentioned, directed by Billy Wilder. So, I'm going, if someone's listening and they don't know Billy Wilder, that's absolutely fine. There's no shame. It's maybe it's someone's first time, just like my first time for certain things.
Yeah.
But Billy Wilder, famous director, things like Sabrina, 1954, Some Like It Hot, Private Life of Sherlock Holmes. We can drop
Private
that in
Life of
since
Sherlock
just last
Holmes.
week we did The Woman in Green. We're
You
making up
can't
for The Woman in Green
you
here,
can't get
guys. We're
far enough.
making
You
up
can't
for
get
that.
further apart than the Private Life of Sherlock Holmes and the Woman in Green. That's for sure.
Yes, no, but this episode is making up for The Woman in Green, is
Oh,
what I'm
absolutely,
saying.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. I
Fate,
mean,
Double Indemnity, and
Double
Aces
Indemnity,
in the Hole, and many, many, many,
The
many more.
Apartment. He did.
Mm.
He did Witness for the Prosecution, which is one of the very best
Yeah.
Agatha Christie films ever made, and not what you expect from Agatha Christie necessarily.
Mm.
And a directing legend, really, Billy Wilder,
Yes.
and a
It's
writing legend. I mean, he wrote a lot of what he directed as well, if not
he
all of it.
co-wrote a lot of it, which
Yeah,
is, that is to have that double skill of being an ace writer and an ace director is, that sort of Tarantino-esque, and others, I guess Nolan just kind of falls into that every once in a while, but yeah, others, that is a unique skill, and
yeah,
not
it is.
many directors possess that. But it's not hyperbole to say Billy Wilder is a master of the craft, both directing and as a writer. And I mean, the way that he's able to jump genres
I was
to
just going to
go
say that.
from
Yeah.
film noir, comedy, have very interesting social satire, but dialogue, my god, the dialogue in Sunset, we'll get on that too, but like dialogue is just popping all over the
All the
place,
time. Yeah, all the time.
like, yeah, just fantastic. But I guess, like all creatives, he wasn't that easy to work with.
No, not easy at all.
No, he I was looking into this, and I found it interesting the way he sort of handled actors and scripts.
Yeah.
It's said that he once told an actor, if I wanted if I wanted your opinion, I'd write it into the script.
That's
Damn.
brilliant. Yeah.
I know. And apparently on Some Like It Hot, Tony Curtis wanted to adjust one of the lines, and the exchange apparently goes, Curtis says, what if I say this instead? And Wilder goes, you could, but then it wouldn't be funny.
The thing is,
And
he's probably right.
I think he probably is. He's probably so good that he might be right. He also, Marilyn Monroe kept forgetting her lines in that film, particularly the "Where's the bourbon?" And apparently, he made her do that take 47 times, and ended up putting the line on chalkboard off camera for her to, and just like, oh my god, like
That's
some of it's like stupid actor, some of it is control freak,
yeah.
but it's like, ooh, that would be a tough guy to work with, I think.
Well, he shares a bit of that with Hitchcock, doesn't he? Hitchcock was famously
Yes. Yeah.
difficult to work with if you were a certain type of person, i.e., a
Yeah.
good-looking blonde lady. He was famously difficult to work with, and
Yes.
he was. There's the old famous quote. I'm never really sure if this is apocryphal or not, or a misquote,
Mm.
but saying that actors are just cattle, and
Mm.
someone says, "What's your motivation for this? What's my motivation for this scene?" He said, "To walk from the table to the door, or whatever it is."
Yeah.
There's, you just hit your marks and say your lines. That's all sort of Hitchcock's approach as well.
Mm. I mean, he also was pretty, I wouldn't say tough, but there were some toughness with Gloria Swanson, who played, Miss Desmond in this film.
Hmm.
Apparently, she was struggling to get back into the mindset of silent film, because she is a massive silent film star in real life. Gloria
Yeah, yeah,
Swanson was, and so basically, he made her restudy silent films, and apparently made her act out entire scenes in silence before shooting, to sort
yeah,
of get into that. And when you watch her performance, her whole performance does feel like exaggerated
yeah,
silent film acting. It's very exaggerated, which is what you would do in silent films. She's sort of like walking around like Nosferatu
yeah, yeah, yeah,
with her hands out.
yeah. She is, and
But
she's got long fingernails. We'll come on to
yes,
that. We'll come on
yeah,
to that.
and he was, to make her get it, he's like, he knows what he wants, and he knows what the actors need to do to accomplish
Yeah,
the best performance. And he sounds like a bit of a dick and a perfectionist, but it pays off in his films, because he is one of the best known film directors of our time, and will
Yeah,
probably be remembered for,
definitely.
as long as Western civilization continues.
Continues. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And he there's a reason for all that,
Mm,
for that Swanson performance, and why he got to do that, which we'll come on to.
mm.
Um, there's a character reason for that. There's a story reason for that. It's not just him being a dick. It's him getting this character to not be a caricature. I think, which she
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
easily be in
Yeah.
lesser hands and with lesser direction. She could
Yeah.
easily be a caricature and then nowhere near as effective as she is. So, but we'll
Definitely.
come on. We'll come on to all that. But yeah,
Yeah.
difficult man to work with, but one of those who you can genuinely say, I think, his work speaks for itself.
Yeah. His attention to detail, I think is remarkable.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, people talk about like things like Lord of the Rings, right? Where there's so much detail in the set design, the amount of stuff that they made that you never actually see on camera. There's a lot of that going on here,
Mm.
where Desmond's whole house is littered with memorabilia. There
Yeah.
are film cans that are, literally filled with that. They look like props, but they are actually filled with her films,
They are
her
filled with her
reels from
films.
her
Yeah.
old movies. The
Yeah.
the the photos that you see of her all over her house
They're all
are
Gloria Swanson.
literally her old,
Yeah.
her old publicity photos, and it's that interesting level of detail that also adds authenticity to the viewer,
Hmm.
but also as the actor who's walking around this set, putting themselves in the mindset of this character. You're not looking at those pictures as Gloria Swanson, but actually these are Desmond's pictures, and in those film cans aren't Gloria Swanson's films. They are Desmond's films,
Yeah.
and that it's that physicality, which is why we bitched about it quite a bit. The sort of weightlessness of a lot of modern films because of CGI and things like that. That physicality of something being there will elicit a better response from actors,
It
I
will.
think.
I don't think it can fail to. I don't think it
No.
can fail to. And because there is a sort of there is a personal connection there, because she's bound to have thought the same as Gloria Swanson is bound to have thought the same as Norma Desmond at some point.
Mm.
So when she's surrounded by, and I think they're mostly publicity stills of her,
Mhm.
of Gloria Swanson.
Yeah, yeah.
And they watch one of her films. She makes William Holden watch one of her films, which it also stars Erich Von Stroheim.
Yes.
So you can, she wouldn't be human if she didn't think those were my glory days. And
Yeah.
she can then, because he's made her do it, she can then channel that into the performance and the sort of character. It's as method as you can get without being method, in it. I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just remarkable stuff. The level of I was having so much fun just watching the story, but also soaking in the atmosphere of the sets. There was something just so visceral about every set piece, particularly Desmond's house.
Yeah,
It felt haunted. We were talking. There's a horror element. There is
definitely a horror
a
element to
ghost
this.
of the past
Yeah.
lingering. That I freaking love. Um, and also just the way he shoots scenes. And again, we talk about film noir, lights and shadows, all that sort of stuff. There are moments that are just just incredible shots.
Yeah.
Something as simple as turning the pool lights on
The pool.
is
I was just gonna say
it's
that, because
electric.
the rest of that shot of the garden is pitch black,
Yeah,
and then this rectangle of light just appears out of nowhere.
yeah,
And it's just beautiful to look at.
I
Beautiful
love
to
it.
look at.
There's also a scene early on, um, just talking on a visual side where Gillis is sitting at a desk, making edits to her script. And as the scene transitions to that scene of him sitting at the desk, he's almost brilliantly white. He's wearing a white shirt and it's brilliantly white
Yeah,
for a few frames, and then it sort of tones down, but it's just quite stark And I like this sort of brilliantly white figure that's in some ways the innocent person or, fool sitting in
Fool.
the spider trap with the
He's the
spider behind
yeah,
him, who comes over and says, "What are you doing?"
and
Comes
she
out of the darkness. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
because she the only thing lit about her is a face, which
Yeah.
of course I suspect is pan white makeup, and
Yeah.
not necessarily. I mean, the character's face.
Yes, yes, yes,
I
yes.
imagine her very much like Baby Jane. She's the same. She's cut from the same cloth as Baby Jane in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Anyway,
Yeah.
um,
Mean Streets will return right after this. Who doesn't love a good boxing movie? Well, Steve Hunt presents the Boxing Movie Podcast. On each episode, Steve and his guests discuss a movie that has boxing as a theme. Do not be put off if you're not a fan of boxing, though. Of course, he covers the likes of Rocky and the sequels, but the depth of boxing-themed movies across cinema history is much greater than you might imagine. Boxing Movie Podcast has covered the early works of Hitchcock, explored the world of blaxploitation cinema and the golden age of film noir, with episodes covering The Setup, Champion, and Stanley Kubrick's Killer's Kiss. You might not have previously considered yourself a boxing movie fan, but after listening to a few episodes of the Boxing Movie Podcast, you may have to reconsider that view. Find the Boxing Movie Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. If you love Mean Streets, join us on Patreon and get exclusive perks, insider access, and a chance to shape the show.
depending on the tier of your choice, get early episode access, your name in the credits, and have your questions read on air.
You can help us choose films for us to review, unlock exclusive commentaries and reviews, and join our members-only YouTube Live Q&As.
So slip on your trench coats, pull your fedoras down, and join us on Patreon today.
Now, back to the show.
But she's sitting in like black, dressed in black, because this is a black and white film, what looks like a black chair in the shadows with just this ghostly face.
Yeah.
And you're right, he is then totally contrasted because he's in a white, what looks like a white suit, certainly
Yes.
the crisp white shirt.
Yes.
Beautiful bit and then she just sort of appears
Yeah.
at the side of him.
Yeah.
So much to say about her character in this. I've got so
Definitely.
much to say about her.
And also,
but,
just go on.
well, I was just going to say just to reiterate that contrast of, but that's all in the same shot. That's black and white.
Yeah.
It's like stark black and white within a few feet of each other that he manages to pull off. I mean, that's an incredible achievement, a technical achievement. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
We talk about light and shadow in film noir. That scene has it.
Perfect. The other thing that's the last thing kind of on the kind of the attention to detail aspect and I think the authenticity side of things is they also made sure to put a lot of silent film memorabilia throughout her house.
Yeah.
Making it feel very much like a shrine to the past.
Mm-hmm.
And even the way the interior of the house looks very much reminded me of like the 1930s Frankenstein film.
Mm-hmm.
It had that sort of, which is kind of just out of the silent era. But it had that kind of set design to it that there is like, is adding more to that. Feels like you are not in the 50s when you're in her house. It feels like you are in the past. Even her car is a vintage 1920s car.
And when they have the New Year's party, that's just him and her and the musicians. And he keeps saying, when are the other guests arriving? he's in white tie and tails.
Yes.
Which it is tails rather than just a tux. And that is by this time that will have been pretty rare, I reckon.
Yes.
So because people might still have dressed for something like that, but it would have been a regular tuxedo rather than white tie. And that again but that's what she would equate. That's what Norma Desmond equates glitzy parties to being. That's how people dress in them. So she's anchored to the past.
Yes.
And so that everything around her is the same. I mean, Erich Von Stroheim wears a chauffeur's uniform. which
Yeah, those little
like
gloves and everything.
an
Yes.
Edwardian chauffeur's uniform. You know, he looks
Yeah.
like Peter Cushing in Star Wars, and it's it's like that again is a hark back to the past because that's what he would have. That's what chauffeurs wore when she was in a heyday. You know,
Mm.
so somebody likens her to Miss Havisham. I think it might even be William Holden,
Yeah, I
and
think it
that
is.
is
Yes, I
exactly
can't
who she is.
Yes.
Her time has stopped, but time has moved on, but her time has stopped, and she hasn't moved on with it. So that everything
Yep.
around her is how it used to be, and
Yes.
it's a brilliant idea for a character. I think whether you
Yeah.
say it's Dickens or you say it's Billy Wilder, it's a
Yeah.
brilliant idea for a character.
What I when I watched the Miss Havisham analogy is the obvious one, which is I think is why they just say it in the film.
Yeah,
But the other thing that was really striking to me was that I was getting many shades of Gatsby. Many shades of
yeah,
Gatsby in
very
this.
well. The
Uh
opening, especially the opening in the pool.
the opening is the ending of Gatsby, of
Yeah,
guy face
yeah,
down in the pool, shot dead.
yeah.
And I loved that. But also Desmond is Gatsby. Like
Hmm.
she is Gatsby if he didn't die and just lived alone in his mansion without, without ever achieving, gaining the Daisy, the love of his life,
Yeah, well,
which he doesn't anyway, and he wouldn't have at the end of the book. This is
no,
what his future would have been basically.
yeah, and
Um,
Daisy is the silent film era for Norma Desmond.
yes, definitely. Yes.
But because
And
they're both divorced from reality, that's what they're both so isolated in their own worlds
yeah,
and divorced from reality. Yeah, so yeah,
yeah.
I perfectly buy that
So on a
comparison as
on a
well.
writing perspective, like looking at the writers now, like Charles Brackett, it came as no surprise that one of his biggest influences is F. Scott Fitzgerald,
Absolutely.
because there is a Fitzgeraldness all over the place, to this film. That is just sort of, it just feels easily baked into the narrative and the characters and the some of the setting.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much the dialogue, but maybe elements of the dialogue. I felt like his dialogue is far more. I looked to see if he was ever influenced by Chandler, and it doesn't sound like he was. But him and Chandler have very similar voices.
Well, I have I w- the voiceover William Holden's voiceover is very Chandler in it, and
Super, super
some of the
Chandler.
one-liners like this is why you never. Does he say something like this is why you never try and strangle a sleepwalker or something? He says you never try and
Yeah,
knock a sleepwalker on the head or something. That struck me as a very Philip Marlowe thing to say,
yeah.
and I wonder whether uh, Wilder sort of did it. Wilder famously didn't like working with Raymond Chandler for Double Indemnity, but I wonder if he took something away from him. You know, because
Hey, maybe.
who knows? One of our many theories that we could have about these films, but
Yeah.
there's
I
a
mean, this
definite.
cracks far more than Double Indemnity.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of. Well, I wonder if it's Wilder sort of taking Chandler as an inspiration and then putting Wilderisms in it, sort of thing. But
Maybe,
I think it
maybe.
is very. This is very Chandlerish when it wants to be.
Yes,
The
super.
whole comment about the pictures and Hollywood and
Yeah.
what it
He was
does
a
to
good
people.
producer. He
Very
had the
Chandler.
ulcers to prove it.
Yeah, that's Chandler could have written that, couldn't he? Let's
Yes.
face it.
So many lines. I was like, "Oh man, damn. These are great. These are Chandler lines. Like, what the
Yeah,
hell?"
yeah,
Yeah, so anyway, it came to no surprise that Brackett was influenced by Fitzgerald. Also, Brackett and Wilder, they had worked on films together for years. They were sort of a long-standing team. But this we'll get to in just a second, but this was their last picture
yeah,
together.
yeah.
Um, DM Marshman Jr. Uh, he's kind of the wild card in this situation. There's very little about him. He didn't do a lot. Unlike Brackett, who did a lot of producing and writing of novels and films and TV shows. And he did a lot of stuff. DM did not. He did a few films and is, I guess, quoted as attributed to certain aspects of the story, things like introducing
Mhm.
the gigolo
He-
aspect.
yeah, that was his
Um,
idea.
yeah, some name similarities, personality. Like apparently have the identical birthdays. But he didn't last long in Hollywood. He left. He left much like what what Gillis wanted to do and go back east. He went back east and
Mhm.
had a career in advertising, and then wrote
Well,
speeches for campaigns and raised funds for
yeah.
Yale University and things like that.
I mean, I don't think it's stretching a point to say that Gillis is probably Marshman. No, in
Maybe,
all but name. In all but name.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The sort of borderline washed up writer who I'm just gonna go back east and m-
Yeah.
live
Yeah.
my life there, doing things out there because this Hollywood
Yeah.
thing isn't working out.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Hollywood's done with me rather than me being done with Hollywood.
Yeah.
He's spat
um.
him out, stewed him up and spat him out. You know, like as many other people we could name.
Well, exactly, exactly. I mean, what is interesting on the filming side, once they are cracking on with the filming of this, is I found it fascinating that Paramount were happy to be the subjects of the film. That
Mm.
they didn't demand some sort of disguise, because you see that all the time in modern cinema. Like, you see that something that's blatantly meant to be Warner Brothers, that's I don't know, Warren Brothers or something like that,
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah,
You see that
yeah,
quite a bit, and I do like the fact that they, were willing to put themselves out there like this, because, and apparently the dailies for this film were highlights on Paramount, in the Paramount lot. People wanted to see what, watch these dailies of this film, because it was a hot ticket, apparently.
yeah. Well, it's nice of them to be able to laugh at themselves.
Well, yeah, exactly. There's a
You know,
self-awareness. It's like, "Oh, that's nice. I don't think we have that anymore."
no, it's quite refreshing. It's quite refreshing
It
because
is.
I mean, there's no,
Uh,
there's no. I think there's a great line where he goes to, I can't remember the character's name now, but he's the studio boss, and
mm,
there's just a nice little exchange where Betty Schaefer, who's this script doctor essentially, comes in and says that this story's rubbish,
yeah.
and he says, "Oh well, Gillis, who behind that man behind you wrote it." And Gillis is there, he says, they have a little bit of an exchange, and he says, "I suppose you would have turned down Gone with the Wind."
Oh, well,
And
I
this,
did.
yeah, he's called Sheldrake, isn't he? He says, "No, no, no, that was me." I said, "Who wants to
Yes.
watch a Civil War picture?" And you just think that's in there for all those producers who
Yeah.
turned things down that then went on to be massively successful, and they probably all
Yeah.
sat there going with a big cigars, going, "Yeah, yeah, yeah."
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Feel for him.
a very good friend of mine used to work in Hollywood and worked for the guy who turned down Star Wars at Universal.
There you go.
So there you
There you
go.
go.
He was
He is Sheldrake in Sunset Boulevard.
yeah. Yeah. It's like, oh golly gosh. Um
And it's
and
those little
yeah,
touches. It's those little touches that really make it come alive for me. That
it gives it
you know,
authenticity. It's
yeah,
realness. They're not they're not it's not embellished. It's just like, this is just it feels like a day in the life in Hollywood, and all of the
yeah,
nonsense that's involved with that. But there was some pushback. Uh, certain people didn't particularly like the light in which, Hollywood was being portrayed. But, hey, I personally thought it was fantastic.
I think it works. I think it's one of the better films that is about Hollywood and the Hollywood system.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, definitely. Because it was Louis B. Mayer, who is, part of co-founder of MGM, who is
Yeah,
now owned by Amazon, who is going to F up Bond. Apparently he ridiculed Wilder, in front of a big crowd of people, apparently celebrities, saying, "You have disgraced the industry that had made and fed you. You should be tarred and feathered and run out of Hollywood,"
yeah,
because of the way that this film was portraying the honesty
yeah, yeah,
of the
yeah,
industry.
yeah. I mean, that's
Screw you, Louis.
yeah. Wake up, Louis. See, this is you.
It
This,
is.
and it's that sort of lack of self-awareness that I think is far too prevalent in Hollywood now. I mean, would this be made now? I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure anyone's got the.
Not with the obviousness of it. It would be, I think
Well, I think they'd do
there's
what you just said. They would fictionalize the studio names, wouldn't they?
yeah, they would definitely do that. There's an interesting new show out called, I think it's The Studio, that has Seth whatchamacallit. I can't remember his name. Seth Rogen? That's not his name. That's Joe Rogan. He's an asshole. Who am I thinking of? Yeah, no, it is Seth Rogen. Yeah.
Seth Rogen is an actor.
Yeah, it is. Okay. For some reason I was like, no, his name isn't Rogan, because it was making me think of that dickhead Joe Rogan. But yeah, Seth Rogen. He's a new show out on Apple called The Studio. That's kind of about studio life, and I'm told that it's very good. So
Right.
I'm interested to see if that is an authentic thing. But you see, other elements, other times when you see this stuff, it just in recent years doesn't hit as
I suppose
truthful as this.
Yeah, something like Get Shorty might come close. You might argue that comes close. But
Yeah.
this does it first, and it does it best, I think.
Yeah. So as we sort of foreshadowed, this was the last film that Wilder and Brackett did together. This was their 17th film, which is that's a lot. And afterwards, Wilder pulled the rug out from Brackett and dissolved their partnership, and it all has to do with a scene, a montage scene that depicts Norma kind of preparing for her comeback. There's a scene where she's getting herself all beautified up. Because she's a 50-year-old lady. She's not 20 anymore. She's not 17 as when she first started out. So you age, you look a little bit different. And Brackett felt that the sequence was he called it cruel. He thought it was a cruel one to show what age does to a person. And Wilder insisted that it be kept in there because it's very clear from Desmond's performance and her mindset that she is chasing her youth, and that is exactly what someone like that would do.
Yeah,
and
that's the point.
And I know we sort of exchanged texts about this, but it called to mind The Substance, the new Demi Moore film.
Yeah.
Which is basically doing that exact same. I need to see that now because I've not seen it, but I know about it. But it is essentially
I'm the same. I've not seen
premise.
it yet, but it's the same. It's the same idea, and chasing lost youth and what it can do to you. And I think,
yes, and the desperate things you do, and the
desperate things you do
corrupts, and it's
and the Substance takes it into horror territory, and apparently it's one of the best horrors of recent years. So I do want to see it. But I mean, I am firmly in Wilder's camp on this. I don't think it's cruel or offensive. I think it's perfectly in character, and I think it's what she would do.
Yeah,
and I think I mean, ironically, because Gloria Swanson was so clean living, when there's that shot of her eye under the magnifying glass, you can see how smooth her skin is. She looks bloody good.
She's gorgeous. Her 50-year-old lady. Not that 50 is that old and decrepit, but
Well, now be careful, Luke. Some of us are 50. So it's so I think it's pretty ironic that she magnified. Her skin is so good, but the scene is sort of making it artificially good. You know what I mean? But I don't think it's cruel at all. I think it's exactly what Norma Desmond would do. And the fact that Gloria Swanson was, as I say, the skin was so good, she probably had no worries about it because she will have thought, yeah, you can magnify this. It looks great for someone of my age.
Exactly.
So, you know what I mean? So I am 100% behind Wilder on that. I think it's a silly thing for Brackett to say.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad it was kept in for sure. It's a very telling and honest sequence that I think should
it's a
have
character
been,
beat. It's a character beat. It shows
belongs.
what she's doing. It's showing what she has to do in reality when she is so divorced from reality. I mean, if anything, it's a vital sequence.
Yeah.
Anything is
Oh,
absolutely
definitely.
vital to the point of the film.
Definitely. So the reception to this film was huge praise. It was
Yeah,
loved by most. I don't want to say all because there's always a couple of negatives out there, but the Times, I really like the way the Time described this film, and it's they quote it as Hollywood at its worst told by Hollywood at its best, and that might be the perfect summation
absolutely.
of this film.
That could even be its tagline.
I mean, literally, that
I mean,
could be its
instead of
tagline.
we've got on our thumbnail there a Hollywood story, I mean, which that is obviously that is the poster, but you
Mm,
could easily swap that for Hollywood at its worst told by Hollywood at its best.
yeah,
100%.
I think so. Um, Interestingly, the Hollywood Reporter had another positive thing to say, but this reviewer kind of could feel the longevity, I think, of this film, and said that Sunset Boulevard sets themselves the task of analyzing the durability and greatness of the film, and that future generations would be analyzing this piece of cinema for a long time to come because of the way they depicted Hollywood and in its sort of I think in a very honest, undignified, brutal self.
We,
There's very little sheen to this.
yeah, we've said this in other episodes that crime fiction, particularly, and crime um, cinema holds a mirror up to the society that it's based on, that it's set in, and sometimes you don't like looking in that mirror. Well,
Yeah.
this is holding one massive mirror up to Hollywood,
Yes.
and Hollywood
Yes.
didn't like what it saw necessarily.
No. No, it
So
didn't.
this for me, it serves its absolute function.
Yeah. Now, it did win some awards. Took home some Academy Awards. Won best story and screenplay and best art direction, which I think absolutely fair enough. Um, and then let's see, but then of the four acting categories, it didn't win any. It was in three out of the four and didn't win a single one. And I'm like, damn, I feel
That's
like it should
really
have done.
it should have done. Yeah, I think she should have got one.
Gloria Swanson did win Best Actress at the Golden Globes, though.
Yeah, well, that's like fair play, but
You know,
I feel
but
she should have
still,
got the award for it. I think.
I think so too. I mean, my whole thing when it comes to awards is I think they're BS, and I pay very little attention to them. I was at a friend's house over the weekend, and they were asking if I watched the recent awards, which what was it? Was the gold? It was the Golden Globes, wasn't it? That was just the other day, right? I think so. Where
I don't know.
Timothy Chalamet gave his pretentious speech about how he wants to be
Oh
one of the
yeah, yeah,
greats in Hollywood, and I just thought, shut the fuck up, you stupid entitled, like pathetic
yeah,
boy of an actor. Clearly, I do not like Timothy Chalamet's acting. I just can't stand that guy. But I was like, Yeah, I sort of watched it, or I knew about it, but I was like, I don't pay any attention to them because I feel like the people who deserve to win very rarely win, and it just becomes boring to me.
yeah. Well,
Um,
I've never been a fan of the Oscars, but
no,
given that they exist, um, there are many performances that I think should have won one than in place of the ones that actually did win
yeah,
in any given year, and this is one of them.
yeah. Sh Gloria should have won for sure. If that's one
She
that's a
definitely should
perfect
have.
example of someone who should have won and didn't. So that's why I'm like, screw these ceremonies; they're full of
Yeah,
poop.
yeah.
Um, Yeah, okay. I think we can kind of like dive into the story now, the
Okay.
meatiness of the story, because I think that kind of gives a good bit of background to how this sucker came about. Um, Now we sort of mentioned it. We sort of mentioned that opening being very Gatsby like,
Hmm,
um, and I thoroughly loved that opening of the voiceover. It's hard boiled from the very beginning with
it
that.
is.
Um, the cops coming and digging pulling a corpse out of the pool, and you don't quite realize that it's Gillis.
No.
If you're paying attention, you might, but if you're, you might not necessarily know that. Interestingly, there was an alternative opening. Did you know about this?
I did know about this.
So
I'm going to preface, if it's a story I think you're going to tell, I'm going to preface this by saying, thank God they didn't do this.
yeah, well, it's I don't even know what it reminds me of. Something it's something out of Beetlejuice. That's it. It would be a scene out of Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
Where the original opening was inside the morgue, and the corpses inside the morgue were all hanging around, sharing stories about how they got there,
How they died.
and it's, again, it's like, in something like Beetlejuice, that actually works and makes sense. For something like Sunset Boulevard, I can see how that would confuse audiences to no end, which apparently it did. They were laughing,
they laughed,
and didn't know if this was meant to be a comedy or a drama.
And I think that would have been fatal, because I think then, if you plant the seed that this is a comedy, I think then you could misinterpret Swanson's performance.
Yeah.
And you would laugh at it, and the last thing that the film wants you to do is laugh at her.
Yeah.
So when those test audiences, was it test audiences or was it dailies? I can't remember.
It was test audiences. Yeah, it was test audiences.
So when they started laughing, I think that did the film a huge favor. Because I don't think it's a better opening than the one we get. I think the one we get is intriguing. I think it's certainly noir. It lulls you into a certain sense of security that you think you know what you're going to get, and really you don't quite know what it turns out to not quite be what you expected.
Yes,
and it adds a layer of depth to Gillis for me, because the Gillis who's narrating it is the corpse, essentially, and he's got all the wisdom, and the Gillis in the living Gillis has got all the innocence.
Yes.
So his corpse knows better than he does about his own story. And there's something really quite sort of fascinating about that for me, and really intriguing, and really a great hook when you realize who it is. Because you're right, the first time watching, I don't think you do know it's him first time watching.
No,
I'm not sure that you necessarily pick up on it, even though you see him shot from underneath.
Yeah, it moves so fast that I can see why you might not see it. And I knew the opening, but even I was like, even though I knew the opening, I didn't quite. He looks so different in the two moments of being alive and being dead that it's easy to sort of to move on. What there's
a great Chandler-esque line I just want to mention when they pull him out of the pool at the end, and he says, and this is Chandler all over for me, "It's amazing how gentle they are with you when you're dead."
Yes, my God, yes.
What a line that is.
There's so much change. Oh, to the point to where I kept thinking, I wish William Holden had played Marlowe.
Yes. Because he can do it, can't he?
He can. And we've obviously, the first episode, 50 investigations ago, was the Maltese, not the Maltese, was the big sleep. And I've always been iffy on Bogart as Marlowe, and I don't hate it, but I don't love it.
He's not my favorite.
There are other people who have done it better, and I think Holden could have been a fantastic Philip Marlowe in another life, because the way he's saying these Chandler-esque lines is so believable. The way he's acting throughout the film, it's like you could easily morph this into a Marlowe film. He could have done it.
He could. I think he would have been excellent. And it was only, again, rewatching this film for this episode that struck me as well. Just how close to Marlowe he is in terms of his delivery and the way he looks. His looks. I mean, he's in
Definitely.
sharp suits, which Marlowe wouldn't be. But that aside, his presence and his height and his looks, I think he's there. Me, it's a lost opportunity.
I do too. The just think about other films that sort of tackle early Hollywood and its sort of sleaziness. I was also getting Babylon vibes. I don't know if you saw Babylon. There was a 2002 film starring Margot Robbie set in 20s Hollywood. So set when, Gloria Swanson would be hot stuff.
Hot stuff. Yeah.
And but it really kind of plays with that sort of, daydream of what Hollywood is, but the depravity of what Hollywood actually is. And there is a Gatsby-esque mansion in that as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Babylon, I know very little about the backstory of the film, though I've seen it. I wouldn't be surprised if Babylon took serious inspiration at moments and at set pieces from this. Because, there is that sort of character who is destroyed by, by the Hollywood life and the endless parties and the kind of a Gatsby-esque party life happening, and just the kind of seediness of it all. And when you see how washed up Desmond is in this piece, it's just sort of the aftermath of the heyday is all over her face, Desmond's face, and you sort of see what that heyday is like. But I think unlike Sunset Boulevard, which takes a bit more serious, Babylon is very hyper with its with itself.
I mean, I don't know Babylon, but I'll tell you what film I did get vibes of watching this again, and it's a film we've covered, and that's Mulholland Drive.
Yeah.
Because I think that does the same thing. That show, if you take Naomi Watts' character in Mulholland Drive, about how Hollywood can destroy somebody, that really resonated to me watching this again, because in a different format, perhaps in a different, Hollywood's been unkind in different ways to Norma Desmond and Naomi Watts in Mulholland Drive, Betty stroke Diane. But it's the same idea that you go to Hollywood to be a star and it ends up absolutely killing you. And I don't. Lynch must have loved this film, because the opening thing of Mulholland Drive, the opening shot of Mulholland Drive after that stupid dance, is the road sign, and that's what you get here.
Yes.
And in Twin Peaks, Lynch plays the head of the FBI, Carl McLaughlin's boss, and he's called Gordon Cole. And Gordon Cole is the name of Cecil B. DeMille's assistant in this.
Yes.
Now, that's no coincidence.
No,
that's no coincidence.
No, not at all. Now, earlier you mentioned that early scene with Gillis presenting a script and Betty coming in and tearing it down. Which to me is not only it's just a fantastic scene all around, because you're getting that studio life, that kind of cutthroat studio honesty, and also like lazy like studio head as well. So when she comes in and she says, "Oh, I think this picture could, it needs, it's cliche, it's trite, da 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 da." And he's, "Oh, I think, so I suppose you're the kind of person who thinks a picture needs to say something." And she's like, "Well, of course it needs to say something." And he's like, "Oh, whatever." And I love that sort of clash of, she's young, she's ambitious, she's 20 something, 22, and he's in his 40s, and he's a bit old, tired and weathered, and he's just cranking crap out basically, and he's sort of given up on the importance of storytelling. And I love that her sort of earnestness is still there to tell a good story that has something to say.
Absolutely. Instead of just get the words down and get the paycheck,
Yes. That is then hilariously undermined when the studio says, "Well, maybe we tweak this and you put some girls in it," and they're like, they have like a softball team. I busted out laughing at that scene because in one of the in one of the more recent South Park episodes specials that they did on Paramount Plus, they tackle the Star Wars problem, and that is a whole bunch of particularly right-wing YouTubers have spent the entire Disney run attacking and going after someone like Kathleen Kennedy and blaming her for everything that she's and Cartman plays there's like a he plays like a there's an alternate universe version of Kathleen Kennedy that looks like Cartman in
Mhm.
this picture in this film in this South Park special, and whenever they're having the studio meetings, Cartman, Kathleen Kennedy keeps saying about all their films, the way to make it better is to put a chick in it and make her gay. And then when this guy in this film says, "Well, what if we just put some girls in it and make it a girl softball team?" I was like, "Oh my god." Because obviously there's one aspect of the South Park episode that is commentating on the idiots who have gone after a particular person who, whether she managed the company right, that's a different conversation.
Yeah, yeah,
But it pokes fun at the people who overreact online. But then at the same time, then when you see this in a film like Sunset Boulevard, you're like, yeah, it probably does happen.
yeah. Yeah.
Make Bond a lady,
Well,
yeah, I can
yeah.
see, yeah,
Well, it also shows how nothing's changed since 1950.
right.
You know. So, I mean, what is how many years ago is 1950? It's a long time ago, and
Long.
this we can still make the same jokes that this film's making.
Yeah, it's kind of in some ways it's kind of sad, but hey,
In many ways, it's
you
soul
know,
destroying, but we haven't moved
as
on very
Charles
much.
Xavier said in the first X-Men movie, evolution is slow.
All right, not half,
Evolution is slow.
not half.
But we also sort of mentioned like we talking about the horror elements of this picture.
Yeah,
That moment where Gillis wakes up and he's sleeping in the garage, the apartment above the garage,
mhm,
and there's that horror-esque organ played by Max the butler.
yeah.
I mean, just fantastic.
Well, I mean, that film is that piece of music is almost synonymous with horror, with certainly European
Mhm.
horror films. It
Yes.
reappears, it appears and reappears with like almost tedious regularity throughout certain periods of horror cinema.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's just one of the many references to horror films in this film. There's
It's just
loads of them.
it's so delicious. It adds to this creepiness because when we think about
And
that
an
sort of
unreality. It gives an unreality to
it
the
does.
whole thing. He's woken up in a nightmare. That's what he's woken up in, an absolute nightmare.
Yes.
And that's what that music sort of underscores, if you like, the fact
Yeah.
that things are only going to get worse for him.
Yeah, and it's sort of obviously this happens after he sort of had his first introduction to Desmond, which we were going to talk, but we might as well talk about her first introduction now. She has kind of two. There's one where you kind of vaguely see her, but then her first full on introduction is outside of her bedroom. Which
Outside the
one were you
bedroom.
referring to?
When I said what?
When you were talking about like when you earlier you were going to talk about her introduction. I was like, no, let's wait. Were you
Oh well,
referring to like when she was behind the screen or
no.
when
I mean
she's outside
when
her
he
bedroom?
first arrives. When he first
Yes.
arrives.
Yes.
Well, first of all, there was the Noir thing of fatalism. So it's by
Mhm.
chance that he's there because he's tire bloke. He's
Of
he's
course.
he's being chased by repo men, isn't he?
Yes.
Who want his car,
Yeah.
and it's pure bad luck that he gets a blowout, and right on her gate. So she's the nearest. Hers is the nearest drive he can get in.
Mhm.
That's Noir fatalism to me.
Yeah.
But as he gets out of his car and he walks up to this abandoned edifice.
Mm.
That to me is, depending on which version you watch, Renfield or Jonathan Harker arriving at Castle
Mhm.
Dracula.
Yes. Yes.
And what you get then is this strange. First of all, you see, and I love the very first time you see her through the blinds.
Yes.
When she's really just a pair of glasses
Yeah.
and a voice, but he's seductively drawn into the front door, very much in the way that Harker can't resist going. And then
Absolutely.
when he walks through, then Max arrives. Max appears out of nowhere to take him in,
Mm.
and then he goes up the staircase, and then she is there, and she does look like Dracula.
Yes.
She
I
very,
wrote that's exactly what I wrote in my notes. Like I wrote,
particularly Nosferatu.
"This
She looks
looks
like
like
Max Shrek.
Dracula."
Yeah,
Yes.
and
Absolutely.
then the sort of unreality of her, and the white face and the eyebrows, and like you say, those fingernails. That's all very, very vampiric. But as the story goes on, I'll just say it now while it's on my mind. Some of the confessions that Max makes later,
Mm.
and what we see happen to William Holden's character, to Gillis, she's the sort of person who sucks the life out of people.
Yes. She is a vampire.
That's vampiric. Conan Doyle wrote a story called The Parasite, and that's about a person who drains the energy of other people by their
Yes.
personality. And
Yes.
I know she's not sucking blood and all that business, but she's having the same effect because she's draining these people of their life slowly and
Yes.
dragging them into
Absolutely.
hers.
Yeah.
And she is vampiric, and she's always
Yes.
dressed in these sort of old-fashioned elegance, which is Bela Lugosi,
Yeah.
in the old-fashioned dinner suit. And there's just something very Dracula-esque about her,
Yes.
and the
I
fact that she lives in a
loved
ruin,
it.
that isn't a ruin inside. It's
Yes. Yeah.
the way she's lit, the way she moves. Sometimes she moves in a very inhuman way. She's
Yes.
almost gliding. When she's coming down the stairs at the end, she's not on. She's not really human at that point to me.
No.
She's become something else, and it really struck me this time how gothic this film is. Like I said at the opening, and just how horror it is. And mainly, and I mean, you mentioned Frankenstein before, but for me, it's really the Dracula.
Yeah. No, the
Influence that I see.
interior reminded me of Frankenstein's kind of
Yeah.
set design. But no, the whole time I was watching, I was Dracula. She was vampire to me. She wasn't Frankenstein. She was 100% Dracula.
Yeah, she is Dracula.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's one of those things that once you realize it, you can't not see it then for the rest of the film.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I'd forgotten, like I said, that just how Dracula-esque it is when he arrives. I didn't remember it like that at all.
Yeah. Because she's also very recluse, like Dracula would be. She doesn't really go out. A couple of times she goes out, but she doesn't really go out. She doesn't go to parties. People come to her. The only time she really goes out is when she goes to glam up her boy, and buy him some new clothes. Buy him some new dated clothes, to buy him
New
that
dated
tux
clothes,
for the tails, the dinner,
Yeah.
But I do
And when she goes to the
Gillis's.
studio.
Yeah, I do love Gillis's line when he comes out of the garage and looks at the house, because again, it's another Chandlerian line where he says, "The great white elephant of a place."
Yes.
And it's like,
That's a
oh my
fabulous
God.
line. That's a
Jeez.
fabulous line. Yeah.
And but I also like that when Gillis and Desmond are having their first interactions, and he recognizes her. He's like, "Wait a minute, you're Desmond. I know you from da 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 da." And her response is, "I am big. It's the pictures that got small."
Yeah, that's a famous line. I think it's often voted like one of the best movie lines of all time. I prefer the one where she says, "We didn't need voices, we had faces."
Yes.
I
I
think
think
that's
the
a
reason
great line.
I love that "I am big" is because it speaks so heavily to her deluded state of mind and her
Yeah,
narcissism.
that's why it's one of
And
the best
I mean, I
ones. Yeah,
can't tell you how many creatives I have met over the years who embody that attitude.
Absolutely.
That I just thought, man,
Absolutely.
it's one of the things. This is why I was so in love with this, because the way Norma is acting, the exaggerated physicality, the way she enunciates her words and is over dramatizing everything. I know people and knew people who act like this.
Yeah,
And it's just
absolutely.
like, and this is why I just
Yeah,
thought this is what's like Billy Wilder is getting the perfect performance, because people know people who actually
yeah.
legitimately act like this and not just a hyperized version of this, which made it adds to the horror element of it,
It does add to the horror
considering where
element of
her
it.
character goes over the course of this film.
Yeah, it does add to the horror element. And the point what I was hinting at before, the reason he made her watch all her own films again and
Mm,
surrounded her with her own memorabilia is that the tragedy of Norma Desmond is that she still acts like that and thinks that's what people want.
yes.
So if she doesn't act like that, then the whole character fails,
Yeah.
because she probably could have made a comeback if she moved with the times, and
Yes.
but her tragedy is that she can't,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's and Dracula has a tragedy to him, not the tragedy that you so often get in films, which really gets on my nerves about his lost love being reincarnated. I can't bear that.
Oh yeah. 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 Yeah.
But Dracula's the speech he gives in the novel about his once proud nation that
Mm,
has descended to nothing, that,
yeah.
and he fought valiant battles and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Nobody's the villain of their own story, and Dracula certainly isn't the villain of his.
Yeah.
And you, you can tell that he pines for that. You
Yeah.
can tell that he wants that back, and because he
Yeah.
can't have it, he wants revenge for it. So
Yeah.
um, Desmond and Dracula, they're very similar. They're very similar characters.
Yes. I agree. And I love the sort of desperation. Gillis is a perfect hard-boiled or noir character because he is a guy who is down on his luck. I need $290 and I needed it real quick because his car is going to get taken away, and without his car, it's like not having his legs. And I love the fact that even though he ha- has decided to, he meets Desmond and she's working on a script and it's terrible, and he thinks he's going to be able to fleece her out of some money to
Yeah,
help her work on this script. And it's him who has entered into the spider's web.
yeah,
And I love the fact that you kind of go in, it's like he is a naive individual who is about to be chewed up and spat out.
yeah.
And he's in this place. She has paid off some of his bills, not all of his bills, paid off some of his bills, moved all of his stuff into her house, into her garage
Yeah.
basement, without his permission, his whole life, and he's just sort of he could walk away at any time, but he chooses not to. He chooses to remain because of this hope of payment. And then
Hmm.
there's that wonderful card scene moment where the repo men
Well,
finally find his car, um, and take it away, and he's like, I need the money. I need the money right now." And she's like, she doesn't respond because she's playing cards with her friends and doesn't want to be in with Buster Keaton, by
with
the way.
Buster
With Buster
Keaton, yeah,
Keaton, which is wonderful.
yeah,
And then the car is taken away, and that symbolism, as the car is taken away, his legs are taken away, and
his
she's
freedom,
walking out behind him, coming up and like, "Oh, what's going on?"
yeah,
Just like,
yeah,
"You
yeah,
made this bed,
absolutely,
Gillis. You
yeah.
made this bed,
This is
sir."
your fault. Yeah, this is your fault.
Yes.
And
And
this is
go
why I
on.
like the idea that his corpse is narrating it. That
Yeah.
that could easily be dismissed as a gimmick, but it isn't, because what it's doing
Mhm.
is saying, with hindsight, it's what the noir hero does. With hindsight, I shouldn't got involved with her. It's Walter
Yeah.
Neff's confession into the dictaphone.
Yeah.
It's John Garfield in The Postman Always Rings Twice confessing to the murdered, so that you know the right ending happen. It's all
Mm.
that, except Gillis can only do it with his corpse. And that's
Exactly.
not a gimmick. That's if I'd still be here if I'd listened, if I'd had my eyes open, but
Yes.
I was blinded.
Yes.
And
Yes.
he's either blinded by the fact that he wants the money, or she has cast a spell on him. She's done as she did on Max.
Yes.
She is sort of irresistible.
Yes, she is.
a
She is a
bonkers
very
way.
unique femme fatale, which I want to dive into in just a second, actually. But but again, you see how she's manipulating situations. Okay, you're in the garage apartment for a bit. Okay, well, there's a leak in there. She must have known there was a leak in there.
Yeah.
And where does she move him into? Into her husband's room.
Yeah.
Where the rooms have no locks.
Yeah. And when he first meets her, he's heading towards that room, isn't he? And she calls him back.
Yes.
As if to say, it's not your time to go in there yet, young man, but you will be in there.
Yes. So I love that it starts with, he gets moved into the husband's room, and then suddenly she's taking him shopping because she doesn't like the way he looks and she wants to make him. And it's at this point in the film, it's not coming across as sexual, but very motherly. And Gillis, on some level, is responding to that mother-like care that she is providing. She's paying his bills, she's buying him clothes, giving him a place to stay, living in luxury.
Yeah,
and giving him a paycheck.
But there's a great
stipend.
There's a great bit in the clothes shop where the tailor says, he says, I don't want that one. I don't want that jacket. I want whatever it is. This tweed jacket, whatever it is. And the tailor whispers in his ear, as long as the lady is paying.
Yeah.
And you can see in his face then, like, the embarrassment almost of being a kept man by an older woman.
Yes.
But he can't say no. He can't say no because he's actually liking the lifestyle.
Exactly. It's a fine lifestyle if you can stomach what's being done.
It's like all these young women who marry, 90-year-old media tycoons.
Yes.
Fine life if you can stomach the cons as well as the pros.
Yeah. Oh my God, definitely. And so to kind of move on to Desmond a little bit, there are interesting similarities between Desmond and Gloria Swanson. In that they're both, Wilder cast her for a reason, and that is she was an old-time silent movie star, and he wanted someone of that period to fill this role. And it just so happened that and it just so happened that Gloria Swanson, like Desmond, at this point in their lives, were washed up. Swanson was big. One of her big roles was one of her first big roles was Male and Female, 1919, where she does a Tom Cruise level stunt in that, where she's lying on the floor in this big getup, and there's live lions that she's allowing them to sort of drape their paws over her that and gnaw on her costume, and I'm like, this is a Tom Cruise level stunt, and something that wouldn't happen today unless you were someone like Tom Cruise.
Well, exactly, yeah, exactly.
But yeah, by the time Gloria Swanson took this movie, she was done. She was living in New York. She figured her time in front of the camera was over. So that parallel is interesting, that Swanson, much like Desmond, are Swanson has that chance to be in front of the camera, and we're watching Desmond lust over the dream. That sort of Gatsby green lights, lusting over that green light over the bay for that stage light to bathe her, her great love. But
absolutely.
But it doesn't get to happen for
her.
But
I think they considered other people. I don't think they considered Mary Pickford, but she was.
Mm.
I mean, she would have been quite good, but I think she thought it's not for her. And there was another one his first choice. The actress's name escapes me now, but she was. I think she was Polish, and her accent was so thick that he thought she can't do this. But I think most of them thought, no, I won't be able to do it. I won't be able to sort of pull it off after all these
Mm,
years, and it, it'll be somehow a
yeah,
dirty film, and sort of besmirching the legacy of what they'd done. But
yeah,
Swanson was, uh, they made her audition. They
yeah.
made
She's
her
pissed about
audition, and
that.
she was affronted. Yes, until
F you.
until a friend of hers says, "Look, if they make you do 5 screen tests, you'll do them because otherwise I'll shoot you."
Yes. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
obviously they could see how much of a comeback this would be for her, and it
Yes.
was, it was
Well, it wasn't. It
to
wasn't.
to a certain
Sunset Boulevard
extent. Yeah.
was the comeback, but she didn't. It's sad because basically when the silent era came to an end, she struggled. Gloria,
He did struggle.
yeah,
Yeah.
Gloria Swanson, she struggled with the transition. I guess most kind of in the way that she was struggling to revert back to silent film
Hmm.
when she was filming this, which was therefore making Wilder make her perform in silent manners.
Yeah.
But she did attempt to come back in 1931 with the film Tonight or Never, but that didn't work, and that's when she eventually just kind of left Hollywood. But the one of the main reasons why Sunset Boulevard didn't reignite her career was she was typecast. They wanted her to play these kind of Miss Havisham type
Because she
characters, and it's like, and she was picky, and I think rightfully so. I mean,
rightfully so, because
all the films to kind of, end your career on, Sunset Boulevard's a pretty nice way
pretty
to go.
it's a pretty good swan song,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I think, I mean, obviously she's asked to do it again and again and again because she does it so well here. But
Yeah.
she's big. She's better than that.
Mm.
She's better than just reprising something that she's already done
Yeah.
so well.
Yeah.
She should have had something else. They should have said, blimey, you are good. Because when she's not, I mean, she never quite gets away from all the silent film exaggerated moves. But when she's begging him after she tries to kill herself and she's begging him to
Mm.
stay, she's very, very good.
Yes.
She's
Yeah.
very, very good.
Yeah.
And that's modern acting, for want of a better phrase.
Mm.
You know, like you say, 20 years after her career's tanked.
Yeah.
So
Well,
she could do
yeah.
it.
Well, and I think as well, like, I think there is an intention behind her acting choices. I think there was she spends most of the film in an exaggerated form on purpose,
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah,
to emphasize her, this is how you act, this is how you be, this big over the top stuff. Like, I think she's sort of intentionally doing that, but then I think in these brief quiet moments you see a more real person. but
yeah.
I,
Well,
but
that's
that to me is speaking to her acting chops that people should have picked up on. Not, oh yeah, she was that thing in that film, we got
yeah,
this other film where there's another washed up thing that we can share, blah, 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 blah. Like,
exactly. Because
you know
when she's Norma Desmond, when she's doing all the you know uh, exaggerated moves, and she's got that particular speech pattern that she carried
mhm.
on. She carried on after shooting had stopped for the day. She carried it on so she could keep it up.
Yeah, she did that kind of method acting bullshit
Yeah.
that
And
Brian Cox would be like, "Fuck off."
yeah, yeah, and when the rats, she said to her daughter, well, she's gone now, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, when she's doing all that, she's being Norma Desmond, the film star, as she thinks she is.
Mm,
But in those more human moments, she's being Norma Desmond that she knows she is, you
yes.
know. And
Yes.
if you can't see that she's playing a woman who thinks that she needs to be an exaggerated version of herself, like she was in the cinema in the silent era, but really she's falling to pieces inside. If you can't see from this performance that's what she's doing, then you're a moron,
Yes.
quite frankly, because it's
Yes.
so clear and it's such a powerhouse performance. And we've said it before, but it's worth repeating. She deserved the Oscar for this.
Definitely. Definitely. I absolutely. Now, her as a femme fatale, like,
Yeah,
I found she's such an interesting interpretation of femme fatale, because one of the things that's so fun and unique about film noir is the genre didn't exist until after the genre was done. And this was so. I mean, this is why I laugh so much at those people who got really annoyed that we did Lethal Weapon. Oh, that's not film noir. Well, you're a fucking idiot. Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
Because the reality is, film noir never really had it was never a genre when it was happening. It's a post mark label on a bunch of films that don't quite necessarily fit 100% into, there's elements of things, which is what makes it such an interesting genre, which is why the like the hard boiled novel you can take it into a Blade Runner sci-fi world, or you can sort of put it into fantasy, or you can put it into horror. Like, we did Strange Darling, which is predominantly marketed as a horror, but it's hella neo-noir,
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
what does it mean to be noir? What does it mean to be a femme fatale? And I think this is where I was so captivated by the character of Desmond as this, because she's not really playing a duplicitous woman. She's not really being deceitful, though she is being destructive.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
And
But and I'm not sure she knows she is. I mean, we could
no, I don't
probably
think she
debate
does
this till
either.
the count, but I don't think she thinks she is being destructive. I
Yeah.
think she genuinely wants what she's asking for, which is a return to the screen. But again, I mean, the choice of Salome is just great, because they were the sort of things that in the silent era, those sort of religious spectacle films like DeMille's King of Kings and all those, they were really popular. Ben-Hur in 22, whatever it is, they were really popular. They had a resurgence, funnily enough, about 10 years after this, didn't they?
Yes, yeah, true, yeah.
But that's the sort of film that nobody was really watching in the late 40s and early 50s. So she's out of date with that, even with the topic, the subject matter. But
Yeah.
that's all she wants. She just wants to make this film and have a comeback and be back in the movie. She says so at the end, and that's true. I believe that.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't think she realizes the destruction she causes as in the wake of that journey to get that desire realized.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
think she means to ruin Gillis's life.
Mm-mm.
Or Max's for that matter.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. No. It's well, there's an interesting quote from there's a film noir scholar. There's an essay that I read by Elizabeth Cowie about femme fatales, and I'm going to read the quote because it's a good one. It applies to this, I think, really nicely. And it says, "Femme fatale is simply a catchphrase for a dangerous or sexual for the danger of sexual difference and the demand and the risks desire pose for the man. The male hero often knowingly submits himself to the Spider Woman." And when you look at Max and when you look at Gillis, I think
that's true.
that is very true of what is happening in Sunset Boulevard. They sort of willingly climb into the web,
Yeah.
knowing what's going to happen here. There is a fantasy element here, because Gillis's fantasy is that, oh, I get all this. I get to live in this lap of luxury, and she's going to pour all this money and give me all of these nice things, and I get to live like a king, which is, better than living poor and dumpy and paycheck to paycheck. And I always get to write this script on the side with this other lady that I sort of like, but I always get to come home to this luxurious life. There's this fantasy element to that. And also there's a fantasy element to it with Max, where, I don't want to give that away just yet, but I guess everyone who's listening to this has watched the film, but his fantasy was this young starlet who took his heart, and he poured his whole life into her.
Yeah.
They chose to be destroyed by their obsession and their fantasy. So is it the woman who is the evil one here, or is it the men who are just being ignorant and foolish in their chasing of a fantasy to their detriment? And it's probably that latter there.
I think it is the latter. I think there's a marked difference between I mean, you said earlier about Norma being manipulative, and she is. She is manipulative because she wants, but she falls in love with Gillis, so she doesn't want him to go because she can't handle him going now that she's got him in her life.
Yeah.
And I don't think she ever foresaw that happening. I think that's come as a surprise to her as much as anybody else. And it's not as if she's been waiting for a man to come, you know. But when he does come, he's unexpected.
Yeah.
And so she is manipulative, but I think she's a far cry away from a character like Velma Valenta in Farewell, My Lovely. You know, she is calculating.
Yeah.
Or
she's no Carmen Sternwood.
yeah, Carmen Sternwood. Or Muriel Chess in The Lady in the Lake. You know, that they are calculating. They are the people who manipulate men. And very often in noir, the man doesn't realize it until it's too late, does he? Until he's absolutely stuck.
Yeah.
You know, like in The Postman Always Rings Twice, or you know, Double Indemnity, whichever. That's not what's happening here at all. William Holden's character, Gillis, wants the best of both worlds. He wants the luxury, but he wants to write with Betty.
Yes.
And he slowly realizes he can't have the best of both worlds, but he's committed. He's got to be committed to the one that he doesn't want.
Yeah.
And Norma is just wanting to do what she wants to do, but then she falls in love with a man that isn't necessarily right for her. I mean, who's the villain here?
Well, it's complicated for sure. There's
It is.
I mean, all sort of a lot of hard-boiled fiction is rooted in sort of Gothic literature, and there is typically an element of sort of personal family or dark secrets that are trying to be kept hidden that eventually come into the light. And that is all over the place here. And there is definitely a sort of Oedipus complex going on. There's a Freudian reading of this scenario where I would say Gillis is sort of the child who Desmond is his sort of surrogate mother. You know, as we said before, she's paying his bills, she's giving him a place to live, but he's being rebellious like a lot of children would be, and he wants his freedom. And I want to go out, I want to hang out with my friends, and you know, he's fighting for his freedom. And there is a very sort of motherly son bond happening, but then in that Freudian twist, there is a sexual component, and that, you know, after she slits her wrist on New Year's, and he gets that, he, you know, calls and finds out he could stay at his New Year party. He could stay where his friends are, his real friends. And what does he do? He shoots right back to her. Why would you do that? Why would you do? Oh my God, you know, and then they fall into bed together. How far does that go? We don't know. The scene fades, but they start making out.
Definitely.
Where does it end? Where does the sexual fantasy end in that moment? Don't know. But the next sort of big reveal is what we get from Max, who is the chauffeur, who is watching these two from a distance and helping out, and, you know, all that sort of stuff. We find out that he is Desmond's first husband.
Yeah.
And you're like, and so it's like, do they get a divorce? You know, like, is the father is watching the son bang the mom in this Oedipus complex?
Yeah,
like,
there's all that going on.
The father is now the servant to the mother and son. Like,
and this is again the horror element of it, because this is the spooky goings on in the weird house at the top of the hill. You know, this is the Marston house in Salem's Lot, where everyone's a bit frightened of it and doesn't want to go near it, you know, because of all the weird stuff that goes on inside.
Yeah.
Well, this is the same. You know, out on Sunset Boulevard itself, all the film stars are driving to the studio, being driven to the studio, and all the people are walking past and all the rest of it. In that decaying house, there's like a perverse love triangle going on.
It's nuts.
You know, that's a horror element to me. That
oh God,
it doesn't really matter what's going on in that house. You know, it could be black magic, it could be vampires, it could be an Oedipus love triangle, an Oedipal love triangle. There's something unpleasant going on in that house that is shut away from the rest of the world, and that's horror all over. You know, that's schoolboy horror.
Yes,
but you're right. There's definitely some Freudian shit going down in that house, definitely, because Max does just sort of stand and look. He looks at him, you know, and stares at him as if.
Yes.
I mean, he's obviously jealous, but knows he
Yes.
can't do anything about it.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
And perhaps doesn't really want to do anything about it because he gets his kicks, sort of by proxy.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you know, how did you get kicked out of the husband's room, Max? Like, you are such a cuckold now, man. Like, holy goodness. Like, wow.
Well, and he says, doesn't he, when he confesses this, and this, I find this really tragic. I find this one of the most tragic things about the film, that he's writing the fan letters, and she boasts about how many fan letters she gets, and she's so proud of them.
Yeah.
And William Holden says to Max, Gillis says to Max, tell her the truth. Give her that at least, is what he says.
Yeah. Yeah.
That, I find that a really heartbreaking scene. And of course,
is.
Max can't do it. Max can't do it. But when he's confessing all this, he says to Gillis, you know, that he gave everything up for her because she was everything to him.
Yeah.
And this goes back to what we said before about the vampiric influence this woman, because Max was a director and gives it all up.
Yeah,
for her to be her slave.
Yes.
You know, that's Renfield in Dracula.
Yes. Yes. It's nuts.
That's a successful professional man giving everything up for this vampiric influence in his life. There's no difference between Renfield and Max in this for me.
Totally agree. I do want to talk about the Paramount scenes though, because I think that was another really standout moment in the
when she goes to the studio. Yeah,
when she goes to the studio, you know, the whole sort of how she gets in, and you know, some people finally, you know, one old guy recognizes her, but the young people don't recognize her. You know, that's all easy stuff. But I think Cecil DeMille, it's DeMille, right? That's how you pronounce it. Sure, I'll go with that.
Yeah, Cecil B. DeMille.
Yeah, his performance, he a real standout performance from a director. He's a real life director who in real life directed Gloria Swanson in earlier films, including Male and Female. There was something both heartfelt but backstabby about that character that I thought was fantastic, because the whole sort of gimmick is Paramount has called Desmond and she thinks it's about the script that her and Gillis have been writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so she doesn't respond to the calls and then just decides to rock up to the studio one day to talk to them about her film. But the reality is someone else in the studio has been calling because they saw her car and they want to rent it for one of the films. And
I mean, that's heartbreaking as well.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's shattering, like, oh, that's why they're calling. Oh God. That's a good reveal. It's a very good reveal.
Yeah, it is.
But that moment where, you know, DeMille's, I don't know, right-hand guy's like, hey, Desmond's here. She wants to talk about the script. And he's just sort of, his hand just sort of falls. He's like, oh God. Because the guy's like, do I just tell her to beat it? And he's like, 17 million people have shrugged her off. You know, isn't that enough? Isn't that enough? I owe it to her. And then you get this sense like, okay, this guy has a bit of a heart, and then you get the whole sleazy Hollywoodness where, you know, they've clearly talked. He's clearly spun her a lie about how he'll do her film next. And then the next thing we get is he calls, you know, tell Cole to forget her car.
Yeah,
don't call her. I'll buy him other car. I'll buy him like 5 other cars, he says, or something along those lines. And it's just, it's shattering because it's like, oh, this poor woman who is just desperate for a revival and to be respected and to have a career is just constantly being shat on.
Well, and she's having a dream shattered and she doesn't realize it.
Yeah,
it's absolutely hard. Some of this is heartbreaking stuff, and that's why I question. I mean, she's not the villain for me.
No,
she's not the villain for me. if anything, she's the victim of it. She's the victim of her own psychosis, but she's also the victim of
Mhm.
Hollywood. Hollywood is the
Yes.
villain. Hollywood
Yes.
is the
Yeah.
villain.
This is
You
where
know,
I get the Gatsby vibe the most, because Gatsby is a little bit similar. I mean, Daisy's husband is quite villainous, but no one, everyone in sort of Gatsby is disillusioned. They're all living a fantasy. They're desperate for their
yeah,
dreams, and they're all clawing tooth and nail to, make their fantasies a reality. And who pays for it is the guy who runs a garage, because his wife, who's cheating on him, gets mowed down by the wife of the man who's
yeah.
banging her. Eh, It's who is the villain? What is the villain? It's similar to Gatsby. There, the villain is an attitude. It is
And
a
and fate, if you believe in it, in
yeah,
Gatsby. It's
yes,
just
yes,
sheer bad luck.
yeah, yes, yes. No, I think so. Um, and I guess we can sort of get to the end ish now. There's, Desmond has been, once she finds out that Gillis is, writing a script with another woman, um, she's eager to find out who it is, and tracks Betty down, and is apparently prank calling her house.
Frank Colony, yeah. Which is such a childish thing to do, isn't it? And she does it. She does it with a real like lavish dose of
She does.
childish glee. She becomes a kid again, and I find that quite endearing in a
Yes.
in a
Yes.
strange way.
Yeah.
I find it quite odd, but very endearing.
Yes. So it all kind of comes to head after that, because Gillis picks up the phone and tells Betty to come over. And at this point in the film, there's been a sort of romance budding with Betty. I'll mention my thoughts on that briefly in a minute, but
Yeah,
she comes over, and he's like, "This is where I've been living. I got a good deal here," he says, and it's a long-term contract, but I got no options. You need to go off and marry Artie. Go to Arizona or wherever he is, marry him, have your life. When you come back, maybe we can finish the script. Blah 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 blah. And it's a weird sort of, it's interesting because it's all a show. Because once Betty finally leaves, then Gillis begins to like pack, and
yeah,
she's like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "I'm out of here now. I'm done. I'm actually going to leave now."
yeah.
And
Well,
then quick, and then go on.
I always think it's he's doing it so that Betty thinks he's a dope, so that
Mm,
because he knows she'll be happier with Artie in Arizona,
yeah,
because she was with Artie before she fell in love
yeah,
with Gillis, and he
yeah,
knows that he's no good for her. So it's
yeah,
his sort of it's his moment of not necessarily redemption. I think that's probably too strong, but it's him saving her from a life that would be horrendous.
yeah. He's trying to do the right thing, the
He's
thing he
trying to
should
do
have
the
done a
right
long
thing,
time ago.
but really
Yeah,
and then when she's gone and she's safe in inverted commas, she's been saved.
yeah,
He's then planning to say to Norma, and I'd rather be a nobody in Idaho than stay here,
yeah,
and that's what, and so he's trying to save himself. Then
yeah,
that,
yeah,
that's that's what it seems to me to be happening. But it's
yeah.
maybe we'll when we talk about the relationship with Betty, perhaps
Yes. Well,
some more stuff will come out. Perhaps,
yeah, so then you have the big, no, well, not the big, one of the big famous lines is, "No one ever leaves a star."
yeah,
And
yeah,
as he's walking out, she's mentions that she's bought a gun. The Chekhov's gun is set up, and then it's paid off, and she shoots him 3 times, and he falls into the water. And then there's this big hullabaloo. We're kind of caught up now. We're back to where the film began,
yeah.
and there's all the
Well, he
press are
says,
there.
yeah,
Go on.
and he says, "This is where you came in," you
Yes,
know,
yes, this is where you came
and
in.
that's that
Yes.
as it because I always think came into the movie theater. This
Yes.
this is
Yeah.
when you walked into the movie theater. It's a great line. That
Yes.
it's a throwaway line, but it's a great line.
Yeah. And everything in the house, Max has set up like a
Yeah,
film. He's got the
yeah,
film lights, he's got the camera going. She's upstairs in her bed, the press are there. It's a big hoopla. And post now that she's killed someone, she is she's now lost her mind. She is now completely gone. She doesn't know where she literally says, "Where am I?" She is totally gone, and she's dressed up in one of her vintage outfits, and descends the stairs of her house as if she is filming a scene from the film that she's been writing.
Yeah. Well, Max says,
Gillis.
This is the palace. This is the palace stairway, and she says,
Yes,
of course, the princess is coming down. And he's given her a last moment of being royalty because she was once Hollywood royalty. It's absolutely tearing up here. It's absolutely heartbreaking.
It is. It is a horrible scene in a, not as in it's badly done, but it is horrible for her and for what is happening, because everything just sort of freezes, and I love how everyone freezes as she just sort of delusionally goes down these stairs, because this is her life. There's nothing else but the cameras. Like, she is just so caught up in her fantasy, the thing she's been lusting for so long. It's like, you just murdered a man.
Yeah, and they're frozen in unnatural positions as well. I think one's got his sort of half turned to take a photo of her, so that it's just. I mean, this is what her life has been. It's frozen in time. This moment is frozen in time.
Yes.
As she glides through it majestically.
Yes.
Fucking brilliant. It's fabulous. It really is.
It is. And of course you got the famous, ending where she's, I'm ready for my close up, and she glides towards the camera in a very Draculan Nosferatu, fingers out, fading away.
Eyes wide, teeth bared.
Yes.
And she seems to walk towards a sort of like mesh of something, like sort of silk or something, because she goes blurred.
Yes.
And I might be wrong about it, but I swear that the last thing you see are like a teeth, and she looks almost skull-like.
Maybe I'd have to go back and
I'd have to go back and watch it, but maybe I was just so overwhelmed by how good the ending was, because it is a perfect ending. I think it's a perfect ending to her story. Yes. And what happens after doesn't matter, because she's had her moment in the sun again.
Yes. Apparently, when she finished the staircase scene, she burst into tears, and the crew applauded. And Wilder threw a party, even though the shoot itself wasn't finished. They threw a party because that's the sheer magnitude of how she landed that scene was worthy of celebration. I think so.
I think so, and I think it's a shame, really, that all right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close up now, eclipses the speech that goes before it, or has come to eclipse that speech, because when she talks about the silent people in the dark, meaning a cinema audience.
Yes,
that's fabulous. That is, but it's a brilliant turn of phrase, and when she expressed it, I suspect she cried because she's expressing what she herself felt, and and exactly what Norma Desmond feels. But it's like she's giving an Oscar speech.
That she'll never do. That she'll
never do. Yeah, character or actress will never do.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's a perfect ending, and it doesn't. Nothing more needs to be said. Nothing more. We don't need to see anything else other than her just drift into this sort of blurred nowhere of her own mind.
Yes. Now, I have two dislikes.
Yeah.
In this film. One is Betty.
Yeah.
Now, I love her introduction.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel her role as a secondary love interest was super thin, very weak, and unnecessary. Which is ironic, critiquing Betty, given that she was the one critiquing Gillis.
Yeah.
But I was very frustrated. No, frustrated is an over-exaggeration. It's just that when she was around, I just sort of thought, oh, you're not really that big of a deal, and you don't need to be a love interest. You could just be a friend, because it's that added complication of, oh, well, she's engaged to Gillis's best friend Artie, and blah blah. It's like, the
So
film the
what?
film isn't about them. The film is about
No.
Desmond and
Yeah.
Gillis. It's not about
Yeah.
that relationship.
I
Don't make
yeah.
that a thing.
Absolutely. I agree 100% with that, and I think she would have been just as well used and probably more pertinent, ironically, if she just gave Gillis a metaphorical kick in the nuts for his
Mm,
writing quality, so that he's on an even lower keel, even lower
yeah,
ebb.
yeah.
Because I don't buy into this relationship at all. It's one of the critics. I'm trying to find the quote now, and I can't find it. One of the critics said that Gillis is just a plot device, and I totally disagree with that. I think
Yeah.
Betty is the
No.
plot device.
Yeah.
Betty is the
Yes.
plot device that just
Definitely.
means he can have that moment where he has a bit of redemption for himself
Yeah.
to make
Yes.
him think he's doing the right thing that we've just talked about. She doesn't, for
Yes.
me, apart from giving him that kick about his writing and giving him that sense that he's doing the right thing at last. She serves no purpose whatsoever, and it's a shame. It's
Yeah.
a shame because I think I think there's more. There would be more for her to do in the right circumstances, but the way
Yeah.
this picture plays out, she's totally extraneous.
Yeah. I agree. She falls into that kind of film noir trope of you have your femme fatale, who is Desmond, who is always offset by the pure woman, the
Mm.
good woman, the good girl. And you can think about that with what a out of the past with Kathy Moffat, who is the femme fatale, versus Anne, who is the all American
Yeah,
good girl.
or Murder My
You know,
Sweet with Anne
yeah,
and uh, whatever she's called in it. I can't remember what she's called in it now.
yeah,
But she turns
yeah,
out to be Velma.
yeah, Velma, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So it's a
but
kind of
Anne
a
says,
cliche. She's fulfilling that kind of purpose, and it's just like, well, I get why you're there, but I don't need you
I don't need you. No, I don't need you.
at all.
Because I don't think Norma Desmond is like we said, is a femme fatale in that way.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
doesn't need to be balanced. She balances herself really because she's underneath it all. She is the innocent, tragic one.
yeah. To make Betty work, you would require an unnecessary rewrite to include more antagonisms between Desmond and Betty, and I don't need that. I
Agreed.
don't want that. I don't
I
want
don't
that.
want
What
that.
is there is perfect.
Yeah, I agree with all that.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
My second dislike is the dead monkey. Fucking weird. Don't care about
Well,
it. What does it
I quite liked
symbolize?
that. You see, I'll tell you why I quite like
She
that.
needs a new monkey in her life, and that's what Gillis is. I don't know.
Well, no, I think it's just movie stars are odd people, aren't they? And they do
Yeah,
odd
it's
things.
eccentric, but it's the one thing I'm like, all right, it's a
I mean,
monkey. Eh.
it yeah, you could lose it and not worry about it. That's what I'll say about that.
Well, it doesn't come back around to mean anything other than, like I
No.
said, is it that she needs a new, she's not going to get with
Well,
Max, so she now needs another love interest. She had a pet, now no longer has a pet. Gillis becomes her new
well, you
pet.
could read that into it, couldn't you? I mean,
Maybe that's it. I
Nancy
feel like I'm
Reagan,
stretching.
Nancy Reagan asked Wilder about the monkey, and he said before Gillis, she was fucking the monkey. Nancy Reagan's response was what you would expect Nancy Reagan's response to be. Total
Oh,
shock.
yes. Fair
But
enough.
yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. I just thought it was like movie stars are weird people and they do weird
Yeah.
stuff and they
Yeah.
have odd things in their life that nobody really understands that's halfway normal.
True.
But
I can see that as well,
I'd
but I'm
take the
just
point.
like,
I'd take the point that you could lose that and not. It wouldn't detract from the film one bit.
no. Other than that, I have no other dislikes. Do you have any other dislikes?
No, my major dislike was, and it's not a dislike of the actress or the character really.
No.
It's that it's what they do with it was Betty.
Yeah.
I don't see any need for Betty to be in it other than the reasons I've said, and the principal reason for that is to make Gillis feel even more like even worse about himself, so that he goes back to Norma, where at least he knows he's wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair enough.
And
Now,
also to give
mm,
it's also to make Norma jealous, isn't it? So that
yeah.
she sort of spirals out of control a bit more. But again, that's a plot device.
Yeah.
That could have been anything. He could have come back from one of his parties when he's gone out with Artie, and he could have come back with smelling a perfume, and it could have been a nobody. You know,
they could just be writing a script together. They don't need to be in love. They could just be friends. It's the romance it's the romance that clouds it too much. So I'm just like, no.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
Now, as we do, we take Patreon questions. So if you are following us, or if you're subscribed to us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month, you can submit questions about upcoming episodes that we will answer live on air. So we have a really good one from Garm 1981. He asks, there's been some talk for a number of years of a remake. Since you like to talk alternative casting, which we do, what would your dream casting be for a modern or modernized Sunset Boulevard? Let's assume money is no object and you can choose whomever you like, with the shoot to start in 2026. This was tough.
This was really tough.
And I'll caveat all this by saying it was tough because A, fan casting is always a little bit tricky because that's essentially what we're doing. But B, you do want to sort of, even in your fan casting, you don't want to be too predictable. And so there are easy fills for this, you know, almost like that really terrible remake of Psycho. That is, you know, star-studded but terrible. You don't want to fall into that kind of category. So it took some time to really think through what would suit a modernized version of this. But do you want to go first with your casting, Matt?
Yeah. Well, do you want to
do one time? Choice? So we'll do Gillis, Norma,
yeah. That's what I mean.
Max, Betty, and Cecil. Those are the ones that I casted. I didn't cast anybody else because I don't. You know.
No.
Already doesn't matter. You know, whatever. Yeah.
No, they're the only ones I did. So for Gillis, I said Andrew Garfield. You know, I think we'll do something interesting with it.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. I like Andrew Garfield. He was someone who I put as an alternative. My first choice was Matt Smith, of Doctor Who and The Crown and House of the Dragon fame. I think he was very underrated in Doctor Who, and I was worried he wasn't going to have a good career afterwards. But he's managed to do that, and I'm very happy that he has, because he's a fantastic actor. And I think he could, because he plays turmoil and stress so well, that I think he could also, like Garfield, could do something really fun with Gillis.
Yeah, that was why I chose Garfield, because his ability to act unease and anxiety is really good. It's really good.
Yeah, and they would bring something different that, you know, wouldn't be an imitation of what came before, I think.
Yeah.
That's what I'd go for, at least. Norma.
Well, this was the hardest one of all.
Yes.
Because the biggest obstacle to this for me was that she is so good. Gloria Swanson is so good that nobody else seemed possible.
Yeah.
And I went through a lot. I mean, I went through Nicole Kidman. I thought about Julia Roberts. I tried to think of those people who've sort of seemed to me to have sort of had the day, and they were big stars in the 90s, and they've sort of disappeared. But I thought very hard about choosing Demi Moore, partly because of the substance. But in the end, once I'd realised how sort of Lynchian I was finding this watch, I went with Laura Dern.
I like Laura Dern for this.
Has the acting chops for sure, is about the right age, and I think will bring something quite magnetic to it.
Yes.
So my final choice, I plumped in the end for Laura Dern.
I like that. I like Laura Dern. That suits. That suits. I was torn between a whole bunch of women. What a shame. No, I was there were some that I had on my list, and then some I took off my list, and I landed on 3, with one being the top. The top one being the most logical, given age of Gloria Swanson and that sort of thing. So my number one pick. Oh no, I'll say it again. My runner-ups were Jodie Foster.
I thought
who
about Jodie Foster.
she's
Jodie
she's
Foster.
a little bit older than Gloria Scott. It was at this point, but I still think she could pull this off very
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
My other choice was Michelle Pfeiffer.
I
who
thought about
think,
Michelle Pfeiffer as well.
yep, she's someone who I think could also easily pull this off in a believable way. But the one that I chose as my number one pick, right? So if I'm casting this, these are my three picks. My number one pick, though, is Jennifer Connelly.
Mm-hmm.
Because she is one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life. And B, what is she doing? She did Top Gun Maverick, and then what did she do before Top Gun Maverick?
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
Hulk 2003.
Yeah.
Like,
she's a good
name
choice.
who I remember from the 90s and early 2000s who I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
she'd be a good fit for that reason. That she doesn't seem to have had much of a career after late 90s to me.
Yeah. Or if she has, it's been a very out of my
niche
sphere. Yes,
niche perhaps.
Yes.
And in that respect, she's very close to Swanson.
Yes. Yeah.
So she's a good pick.
Max. Who did you pick from Max? Oh, God.
I had two.
Okay.
I don't know which one of these I prefer. I think the more serious one was Mads Mikkelsen, who I thought might do something quite nice with it. But my second pick was John Malkovich, who I thought would do something ace with it.
Malkovich, that's interesting. I would almost go with Malkovich over Mads, I think.
Yeah, I think I.
But Malkovich is so famous that would it stand out as being Malkovich, whereas would Mads be able to be his own Max without?
Well,
that's a tough. That's two good picks.
It's tough. I mean, I just think Malkovich is so like mad.
Yes,
that he would make that. My concern about him is that he would try and make it would come across as too much of a parody. Whereas Von Stroheim is absolutely believable as this bloke who has lost everything through his own choice.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether Mads Mikkelsen would do something more with
Mads Mikkelsen. It's Mads Mikkelsen.
Whatever his name is, who cares? Who cares?
People.
Well, I suppose he does because it's his name.
Yes.
But yeah, I would love to see Malkovich do this.
Yeah, I could go with that. I had two kind of ideas. One was I sort of toyed with the idea of Dave Bautista, but I don't know if he's old enough.
I don't know massive fella out of.
Well, he was massive. He's not massive anymore. He's like shed a ton of muscle.
Right.
And
in Glass Onion, the bloke in Glass Onion.
He is in Glass Onion. Yes, he's also the guy with metal thumbs in Spectre.
Inspector. Yeah. I know.
But he's also a very good actor, even though he's played some boring roles. I mean, his one scene in Blade Runner 2049 is fantastic. Have you ever you've never seen a miracle? It's like, no, he hasn't.
Yeah.
I thought about him, but I thought I don't know if he's the right age. He might not be the right age. He might actually be a bit maybe too young. I don't know. So then I then thought Bryan Cranston.
I thought about Bryan Cranston. Yeah, I thought about Bryan
Cranston. But then I settled on Christoph Waltz, who
interesting.
Who like Max in the film would have that Eastern European-y sort of accent and play that sort of role.
I wondered whether I wondered whether the accent was necessary. Was needed. Really,
it's not. But I love Christoph Waltz and
it would have been a nice throwback. Yeah.
Who would you pick?
Two Daniel Craig Bond villains then we've chosen.
This is true. This is true. This is true. But hey, they're good actors. I can see why they cast
absolutely.
them in completely squandered, both of them. But
Yeah,
and
well,
both
quite.
from the same film. They were both Inspector, and they both were squandered. Inspector.
Yeah, well, I'm at Mads as well from Casino
Oh yeah,
Royale.
crap. Yeah. Because it was Christoph
So in
Waltz,
that
Dave
case, we picked
Bautista, and then
three
Mads. Yeah.
Bond villains. Three Bond
Yeah.
villains we picked.
Yeah. Bond is in the house.
Yeah.
And Gillis can be played by Pierce Brosnan. No. Okay. Who would we pick for Betty?
God no. For Betsy, well, I really struggled with this because I don't really know anything about current actresses that are of this age.
Okay.
I'm afraid. So
Fair enough.
I don't know. This is just a name I've seen banded around. Who looks who when I Google her looks the sort of person that I could see doing what Betty does in this film, and that was Haley Steinfeld.
Yes. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, maybe.
Because I mean, she's only in a couple of scenes, so she doesn't, she doesn't really, and she's not really a character I wanted in the original. So I did struggle with this, but my knowledge of sort of 20 to 30-year-old,
she was good. She was good in Bumblebee. I like that movie. She was good in that.
oh,
She could work. She could work. She's a good actor. She's a very good actor. She could. Yeah, she's that could work. Did you have any other runner-ups, or just stick with
no,
no? It's fair enough. I have two. One is maybe a bit sort of meh, but one I picked was Jenna Ortega, who plays Wednesday, the character of the Addams Family character.
Yeah,
in the
that I can
Netflix
see
show
that.
Wednesday.
Yeah, I can see that.
She is a good actor, but I'm like, is she too famous now? I don't know. I'm always thinking about this. I don't want it to be too star-studded, so I'm like, how famous? What tier of famous can I go with on this? But I think the one who I'd really like is Millie Alcock, who is the young version of Daenerys in House of the Dragon. She's playing Supergirl in the new Supergirl movie.
All right.
If you've ever, so she's little, I don't know if she's little. I don't know if she's little. I don't know if she's little or not. But Rhaenyra, not Daenerys. She plays Rhaenyra. She plays Rhaenyra in House of the Dragon.
Right.
I think she's someone who has who has gravitas and would be able to do. I mean, both Jenna and Millie have gravitas, would be able to do this. So one of those two, in terms of like an early 20s kind of person, I think one of those two would be good.
Yeah.
Who would you pick for the Cecil DeMille character?
Well, if the question had said it doesn't matter if they're alive or dead, I would have said David Lynch. So that because I got strong Lynch vibes from this watch, and given I'd chosen Laura Dern, I thought it would be nice if Lynch directed one of his favorite actresses as Norma.
Yeah.
In the same vein as John Malkovich, I thought John Carpenter would be hilarious as this, but and I just thought that'd be nice to see him just do a little cameo in a remake of this. But I tried to think of who would have had the impact that DeMille had in his day. Who was the sort of massive blockbuster director of his time, and I said Spielberg.
Yeah. I get why you might say Spielberg. I do sort of get that. I worry that might be a little bit too, like, people are like, oh, of course it's Spielberg. But then my choices are probably not that great either. So, because it's tough. It's tough. It is tough. I had the same thought. I was like, who is big in? I was thinking of 90s. Who was big in late 80s, early 90s? Making big blockbusters and making stars of people. And I sort of landed on two people really that I thought could be worth it, as almost sort of gimmicky casting for it. But one, I thought of Tim Burton, because he was he was big in the 90s. He's not so much anymore, but he was big in the 90s, and it could be sort of, and he's more of a, he feels like more of a company man now in his old age.
Yeah.
Making Disney movies, and It's like
I can't see him making the equivalent of Batman 89 now.
no, I can't either. So I'm kind of like, that could work. He's just a corporate guy now, just making movies. He doesn't, whatever. But then I also thought of James Cameron. Could easily,
Oh, that's a good one.
big action
Yeah,
man of the 90s,
yeah.
80s and 90s. That could work because again, he's not a company man, but he is making some of the boringest schlock you could possibly watch nowadays.
Yeah.
But because he, clearly DeMille still had, some oomph about him and some,
The
he might have been old, but he was still making stuff.
Yeah,
I'm
he
like,
wasn't a has-been.
who sort of fits, you don't want to has been. Who's sort of still out there doing stuff, but it's not really that good anymore either. And I was like, those are my picks. Those are my picks.
That's good. The other one I thought was Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, but then I thought he's not washed up enough.
Yeah, that's why. Well,
Yeah.
one of the reasons I discarded him was, well, no, the opposite really. I thought he's got to be some because DeMille was still quite popular at the time, and he was
Yeah.
still bankable. So I
Yes.
thought, I shouldn't really be a has-been. It should be somebody who is still older, yes, but still
Yeah.
sort of bankable, even
Yeah.
if they might be going out of fashion. And
Yeah. Well, both Burton and Cameron are still bankable. Like Cameron's, I hate them, but the Avatar movies make a bunch of money. I don't
there
know
you
who's
go.
buying
He's a good
tickets to go
choice.
see them, but apparently people are.
I
So,
reckon if we could somehow merge these two lists,
yeah.
I don't think we're far off the mark. I wouldn't say.
No, we could be put together pretty good cast. I think pretty good cast. This for the 50th. This is clearly a supersized episode, given that we've pushed 2 hours now. But
Yes.
do you have any other remarks before we rate
I,
this puppy and put it to
I would
bed?
only say that if there's anybody listening or watching who has not seen this film, you make it a priority to watch it because this is the word classic is bandied around too freely these days, but this is genuinely one of them. And
Yeah.
I think it still stands up today, and I think it's certainly a film that should appear on those lists of 1,100 films you should see before you die, sort of thing.
Yes.
I think it's brilliant, this film.
Yep. I have nothing more to add. I agree. It's wonderful. It's worth watching. Let's rate it. So, like we do, we rate all of our films out of 5 Falcons, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. I'll go first. Easy. It's a 5 Falcon for me.
Yeah, even my dislike of Betsy
Yep.
isn't enough
Nope.
to shave anything off this. This is a definite 5 Falcon film for me.
Yeah. There we go. Well, I think we have thoroughly investigated Sunset Boulevard. Happy 50th investigation to us. Pat on the back.
Pat on the back, yeah.
But I think we can file this case and
I think we
put it in
can
the
file this
drawer
case.
and shut it and consider it done. But don't worry, we will be back next week with another investigation. So remember to like and subscribe on all the platforms if you can, and remember to take care walking down those mean streets. So we just want to give a quick shout out to our paying patrons. We have Steve from the Boxing Movie Podcast.
We have Garm 1981.
And we have Gregory Sandoval. They are our initial ground floor patrons. So if you want to join Mean Streets and become a patron and get access to cool perks, make sure you head over to our Patreon page and subscribe today for as low as $1 a month.